Do you have a brand? You probably do, and you might not even know about it. We're going to talk some more about that. Welcome to another episode of The Good, Bad, and Ugly of Business. I'm your host, Catryn Becker. On this podcast, we love to interview all sorts of different successful people from different industries, different roles, different life experiences, so that we can learn what they've learned in their life that has made them so successful. Because while a smart person learns from their mistakes, a genius learns from their mistakes of others. So you can either avoid those mistakes or you can fail faster. So my guest today has had a really great career and he has done so many different things within the branding space. So I'm very excited to bring him here. He is the co-founder of a great brand called Brand Castle Growth Partners and is really going to help you to understand from the chief marketing position. Bryan Alston, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
I'm excited too because brand is something that I feel like people think they know what brand means, but probably have a lot of misconceptions in that space.
Mm. Yeah, totally.
What are some of the crazier things that you've heard in that area?
So yeah, I would say like for me, I think a brand is really what people are saying about either you or your product when you are out of the room. Or how I like to phrase it is if you are expecting your customer to refer you to a friend, like what is it that they're going to say about your product to them? That's really what your brand is. And sometimes what is being said is not what's on your website. It's not the colors. It's not the look and feel of the packaging. It's like really how you made them feel, the space that you fill in their life. And
Mm.
really, it's a little bit bigger than what most people think about. Um,
Because
and I
doesn't
think that
wasn't like Maya Angelou or something saying like um it's not what you say that people remember, it's how you made them feel.
totally, and yeah, that's spot on about like you as a person. I feel like if you're a consumer product, which is like where I've spent my whole career marketing, that's true as well. It doesn't matter if it's a bar or if it's a car or if it's a clothing item or whatever it is. That's really something that is having an impact on someone's life. And you might not be able to measure that impact or might not be able to quantify it, but the impact itself is what the brand is. And like a perfect example of this is a wedding dress. A lot
Hmm.
of, or like clothes for babies. Like people are like, oh, well, like why is this so expensive? It's just a dress. It's just a piece of fabric for a baby that they're going to outgrow in a few weeks.
Yeah.
But is it a dress? Is it just a piece of fabric? Or is it what this person who's wearing the dress is going to feel when they're in it? Just like
Yes.
getting married to the person that they'll hopefully be with for the rest of their life in front of their family and friends and loved ones. That's what they're paying for. That's what the brand is. It's not the fabric, and it's not sort of the logical sort of approach that I think a lot of brands in the consumer space have have been taking over the past decade. And just to give you like a little bit more context behind that statement, like I spent most of my career as a performance marketer, just like really focused more on the data-driven kind of marketing for e-commerce brands. And I used to be guilty of thinking that branding was not important. And what I would find is I would have clients where every single checkbox was checked. We're like, we have a perfectly optimized marketing funnel. Why are we getting more sales? What's going on here? And
Hmm.
like looking back on it, I realized what was missing was the branding. We had a really good way of like getting, hey, this Facebook ad gets this many clicks and it's driving to this landing page that converts people here and all of that. But that is not a brand. That
Right.
is it's like it's the engine of a car, like versus the brand of the car, if that makes sense. And the brand missing is why we weren't able to get that word of mouth marketing. It's why we weren't able to get people actually it's like the repeat purchases. It's why we weren't able to get more of the organic sales that really grows a company from beyond just having like a really good marketing funnel to being something that's really a cultural phenomenon.
You
And I
know,
think if you look at the most successful brands, that's what they focus on.
and it makes a lot of sense as you were saying that because, and I think it's probably because of exactly how you started out is that brands aren't as measurable as sales.
No.
So it's so easy to think like, okay, we're making lots of sales. Um, but I know if you work backwards, they say, well, if your marketing's really good, it makes sales easy. And if your brand's really good, it makes marketing easy.
Yes,
I know there's
correct.
some clever phrase for that. I can't remember exactly, but that's the gist of it, right?
Yeah, totally. It just has a compounding effect. Like, I mean, with marketing, you can get people to try anything once, but if they're going to stick around, and if like again, if they're going to do what is the most powerful marketing of all, which is word of mouth, they need to have a really, really great experience, not only with the product, like its taste or how it fits their body or whatever it is, but how it makes them feel.
Yes.
And it needs to be something that they are going to feel proud of recommending to their family or to their friends or people in their community. And that's what a brand does. And I feel like that's something that was missing. And again, I'm totally guilty of this myself. And like when I left the agency world to go in-house um, as a CMO for the first time, I was like, you know what, I'm going to try this whole branding thing. I'm
Give
just
it a
going to,
whirl.
yeah, I'll just give it a whirl. I'll just see how it goes. And it totally changed my entire mindset because I saw how it made everything so much easier. It made the marketing substantially more effective because we weren't just like showing the product with this kind of lighting that we tested with this kind of, text, which again, that's part of it. But we were able to think beyond that. Like for example, like our customers for Greater Than, it was the company I was the CMO for. They were um, an electrolyte drink for breastfeeding moms, essentially, and pregnant women. So a very specific use case, a very specific target market, a very specific time of their life.
Right.
And we were the first hydration brand to really focus on the dehydration that pregnant and breastfeeding moms often experience. Before this, no other brand had even focused on that. Most hydration brands were either like Pedialyte, where they're
Mhm.
focused on like you're
The
sick,
kids. Yeah.
or it's like a sports drink. But there wasn't anything focused on the other kind of dehydration that people experience. And with Greater Than, who initially started as a sports drink, that was the formula. And I found in the data that it was actually this pregnant and breastfeeding mom audience who had this, again, this organic reaction to the product where they were in love with it. They would tell all their friends, they would talk about it in all these private mom groups. And we decided to lean into that and
Wow.
actually just like go all in. Like we totally pivoted the whole company towards that audience. That's where the branding piece really came into play. Because I mean, as you can probably see and hear, I'm not a breastfeeding mother.
Really?
So it was, yeah, that's a little secret that I'll share, but it was really important for me as a marketer to, again, not think about this from a transactional state, but more from how can us as a product and also as a platform add value to these moms' lives. And what I did in my research was I spoke with a bunch of moms, including the wife of one of the co-founders. I'll never forget this. I went to their house for about 30 minutes and I just observed her in
Mm.
her element with her two children and literally how she was doing like 15 things all at once. She was like negotiating with the children. She was just like managing the schedule. She was doing the laundry. She was trying to nurse. It's like she knew everything. And she was just like juggling all these things. And I just saw how exhausted and drained she was, but also how energized she was by it and the pride she took in that job that she had. And when I spoke with her verbally and just listened to her talk, she just mentioned that as soon as she gave birth, she felt this sense of isolation. She
Mm.
felt like there weren't a lot of other moms or people in her home or in her network that she could relate to. And when she would go on a lot of these private mom groups online, she felt judged when she would ask questions.
Mm.
And for me, I was like, okay, we as Greater Than can't just be a electrolyte drink. We need to use our platform, which at its peak was getting half of all breastfeeding moms in the US to our website, to actually address those problems. So we had a private Facebook group where it was all positive vibes only. We specifically said if like there's no judgment, there's no attacking people for asking questions, or else you won't be in the group anymore. We intentionally used our Instagram to not talk about our product at all, really. It was really focused on sharing recipes, like funny skits, like sharing um these stories that moms were telling, like tips and tricks on how to feed and like nurture baby. Like it was all stuff that wasn't really about our product, but it was about the value that we can add to her life.
Sure.
And when we would have customers rave about our product and send us fan mail, essentially, that was paragraphs long, they would always talk about how they felt seen
Yeah.
and how they really appreciated that there was a community of other moms like them that they can interact with in the comment section of our Instagram posts or in our private Facebook group and our ads, or when we would bring lactation consultants to do Instagram lives, or again, all these things that seem totally irrelevant to essentially a sports drink.
Yeah. Yeah.
To these moms, it was everything to them. It was relevant because that is what was missing in their life, and that we as a brand can really help fill. And when we would advertise our product, it was always testimonials and the photos that they would send us. And again, it was thinking about it less of how do we push this product and more of how do we elevate the voices of these people and give them a stage to tell their stories. So it's just a very different mindset in terms of marketing and in terms of branding. And that basically took this company from about 300K a year to about 10 million online because of that emotional connection that was being built. And this isn't just like a one-off. I've seen this happen with a lot of other brands I've either consulted with or in my network, where again, when they sort of take off the performance marketing hat and sort of have that as a secondary part of their marketing focus and really focus on how do you add value and build emotional connection with your customer base that's real and authentic, they are rewarded with this intense loyalty from their customers.
Well,
And
and I love, I mean, just being seen.
yes,
I mean, that's something that any human can give as a gift to another human,
totally.
of being able to be seen, feel part of something. I mean, in a lot of ways, we're herd animals, right? We want to
Yeah,
be in a community. We don't necessarily want to be isolated when we're feeling healthy and wanting to be with other people. So I really love that as just a concept. And it's almost like it's something around like finding like the negative space. Like it's not that what they were telling you they needed, it's what
yes,
you could observe and see, hey, there's pieces here that are missing. How can we help fill that? Even if it wasn't directly about your product. You know, it wasn't the
totally.
product filling that need,
Yeah,
but being part of it. And I really, really love that. And it kind of makes the name even make more sense on like deeper levels. Like we're greater than a sports drink.
yes,
I don't know if
100%.
that's where it came from, but that's what comes to me hearing that with that story.
So like, I mean, like again, the sports drink, it was always called Greater Than. We just changed like nothing about the name or about the actual formula itself. In fact, our packaging still looked like a sports drink for most of this journey.
Hmm.
Um, and again, like as we were doing the rebrand, which took about a year of just intense research and focus groups and all of these designs, I thought about what you said, which is I don't want to be like every other drink or product that's in the mom and baby aisle. And when I listened to the customers and sort of took off my biases and just heard them, what they were saying is, I do feel like a badass. I do feel like an athlete as a mom. I am doing a lot of really, really impressive things that seem to be taken for granted. And I like that Greater Than, even though the packaging still looked like a sports drink, like it showed people surfing, it showed like a person hanging off a cliff, like doing all these things that again aren't associated with being a nursing mom or a pregnant woman. You know, they were like, well, I feel like I can do those things because I'm and again, we even said this, like we think that moms are the greatest athletes of all
Hmm.
because of the massive amount of, again, athleticism and feats of impressive stuff that they're doing on a daily basis that they might not
Endurance.
even. It's an endurance sport.
Yes.
And that was something that, again, zooming out from that one meeting I had with the co-founder's wife, I think that's what I couldn't articulate at the time, but that's what I saw. I was like, this is an extremely impressive feat of endurance. and grace and athleticism and all of these things in one. And I think that having that level of empathy for your customer base, regardless of the product you're selling, is critical. So that way, to your point, you can see the negative space. You can see the stuff that's sort of on the margins. Or just like I said, like with identifying this in the first place, it was identifying things that were unusual in the data.
Yeah.
I saw that there were like some patterns with this one specific group who I could tell were women who were usually between 25 and 45 who seemed to have children. That's all I really knew. So the hunch was that it would be a drink for soccer moms and that they were probably
Oh,
buying this for their kids who were playing sports, and then maybe they would drink it themselves. And that was really what we sort of initially started, and we started to see the results get less horrible. They weren't great immediately, but they were better. And then, like I mentioned, after a few months of testing this audience of like the whole like soccer mom angle and like being athletic children, that's when we began to get this organic traction amongst pregnant and breastfeeding moms, where without
interesting.
us even prompting it or even marketing the product that way, some of those moms must have been breastfeeding and they began to notice that it helped with their fatigue and their muscle cramps and their milk supply and all of these things that,
Yeah. Important
unbeknownst to
factors.
us, are from dehydration. And like I said, like as we pivoted the company towards this, we talked to doctors and lactation consultants and other people who are experts to be like, okay, like they're saying all this stuff, but is this even valid? And they were like, actually, it is. Like, it's like when you are chronically dehydrated, which you often are when you're pregnant and nursing, it can lead to a lot of issues. And this drink, because it had organic ingredients and no added sugar and was non-GMO and all of that, not only did it have the high enough electrolytes, but it also had the nutritional content to actually work very well with pregnant and nursing moms.
Mm.
So that's the other thing I would say about the brand, which is your product has to sort of check the boxes for your customer, but that's not enough, especially nowadays where the barriers to entry to launch consumer brands are so low. You need to have an emotional connection and that community that you're building around your product that can really, really take your brand from being a one-time purchase to being a lifetime purchase.
Oh, absolutely. And something I think that, really I'd like to delve a little bit deeper, at least repeat, make sure people hear this, is the power of the pivot.
Yes.
We can, as humans, we don't like to let things go. We like
Yeah.
to hold on to them, sometimes, with death grip. But if you guys hadn't had the ability to just kind of say, hey, we don't have to really change much, but it is a mental shift of saying we're going from a sports drink to, a nursing mom drink because, I don't know what the rest of the company looked like, but just as you said, you're neither of those two things.
Yeah.
You don't have necessarily the life experience, but I don't think that's always necessarily crucial to have lived it to still have empathy for the situation and to see that
Totally.
negative space. So I love the idea of pivoting. But my next question that I have is just kind of more of general in terms of marketing and brand. And
Yeah.
so most people who own their own business have done some sort of marketing. They understand the difference of having an A/B test, doing split testing on different marketing campaigns to see what works.
Yes.
So that's, more of kind of a science. It's a bit of trial and error and seeing what works, checking the data. How does that come when it comes to brand? Is brand more of an art or is it more science as well?
I think, especially nowadays, it's both. And you can test, like, I mean, like I mentioned, like with like the packaging redesign, where we actually were like, okay, we have enough years of data to sort of know, based off of all these A/B tests, what specific language our like customers respond to, like what kinds of colors. Like I feel like with Greater Than, it was a mix of art and science,
Hmm.
where yes, we sort of had an aesthetic and an emotional understanding with our customer. But like I mentioned, my whole career prior to that was being a performance marketer. So we A/B tested literally everything. I mean, I don't even know how many hundreds of versions of the website we tried, like every email, every ad. We tested a bunch of different audiences. So that way, by the time we got to that stage where we were ready to actually change our packaging, we had a bunch of data to inform that. And when we were working with our branding agency, the people who were doing the designs, I saw it as less of like, hey, here's a formula that you must stick to, and more of like, here's a wide fence you can roam within. There is a fence, but there's a very wide pasture within the fence. And I want crazy ideas. I want you to be creative. I want you to not feel constricted. So that way we can design something that's going to really stand out and push the envelope
Hmm.
versus just being a soft pink and or like sky blue pastel. Like
Right,
every
right.
other thing that's sold to moms, when again, based off of our research and our A/B testing, we know that that's not how they saw themselves. They
Sure.
liked that we used bold colors and that we had a sense of excitement and
You know,
boldness.
and I think I have two children, and something that I noticed when I was pregnant, people treat you like you're sick almost.
Yes,
And I'm like, I'm not sick. Like, this is the most normal, natural thing I could be doing.
totally.
So
Uh,
I love that. I
yeah,
resonate with that a lot when you were talking about that earlier of like, well, yeah, why couldn't I go rock climbing or surfing? Like, it's
yeah,
having being pregnant, it's 9 months out of your whole life. Like, it's not that much.
100%. And then, like especially when you're nursing, so like post-pregnancy, like I mentioned, like a lot of the moms felt they were on a pedestal when they were pregnant. Like, yes, they were probably treated like an invalid, but they were also catered to and
Yeah.
seen. They
Yeah.
were very visible.
You
And they,
can't miss the bump.
yes. And then they felt as soon as they gave birth, they were invisible. And all the focus was on the baby,
Hmm.
which, like, again, it makes sense. But also, they were like,
Right.
but what about me? I just gave birth and I'm actually here doing all
Created a
this.
human.
Yes, I'm keeping this human alive. I'm doing all this stuff. I'm recovering. Like there's all of these things. And that was something that again really stuck out to me because I was like, well, this is a time where she needs the excitement and she needs to sort of feel like what she's doing is exciting and is impressive. So
Mhm.
instead of us again almost coddling these moms with the sort of pastel packaging and it being cute and like soft and cuddly. The one thing I told the branding agency was, I don't want pastels at all. No pastels, period. No soft pinks, no light purples. I don't want it to look like anything else that's in the mom and baby aisle. And I think that that was something that was very well received by the customers because again, if you like your point about like just like being like really stuck in sort of this like limited mindset. I think that if you sell a sports drink, you assume like, well, I need to get star athletes on my website. I need to have it look a certain way. And I'm like, and like the first time I tried it, I was like, is this a sports drink? Or or is it a drink that hydrates you with cleaner ingredients? The first option has a very specific formula that the customer expects, as well as a very low price that they're willing to pay for a sports drink that's been set by Gatorade. It doesn't matter if the ingredients are better, if it's healthy, they aren't going to pay more than like a dollar or two. Versus if you are a hydration drink that has electrolytes and clean ingredients, that's a much wider range of people. In fact, it's every human being on the planet who needs to be hydrated versus people who are doing athlete stuff.
Right,
Like, there's not
right.
that many rock climbers or marathon runners out there. So again, like I think that if there's one thing I would impart to people from a branding standpoint, it's to be far more open-minded than most people are about your product and who it can appeal to. Because I've lost count of how many clients I've worked with who were in a similar stage as what Greater Than was, where they had a very specific idea of who they wanted their customer to be. But when we looked into the numbers or talked to customers on the phone or did some research, the people keeping the lights on were the polar opposites
Mm,
of who perhaps the founder and their friends were, if that makes sense.
yeah.
So I think that like being open-minded and having that customer empathy it sounds like some fluffy, hippie stuff. And like I said, like I used to be guilty of this, but I very quickly learned that it is critical, especially nowadays, to have a very community-oriented mindset, regardless of what the product you're selling is.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's such a great example of what you experienced at Greater Than. So I'm so glad that we were able to dig deep in that. But in our time remaining, I want to talk about their transition that you made from Greater Than into what you're doing now at Brand
Yeah.
Castle Growth Partners, because you were always inside the business
Yeah.
or consulting other businesses. Now you're running your own business.
Yes.
What has that transition been like for you?
That has been something we can talk about for a whole episode. But I would say,
Part two.
yeah, it's been great, to be honest. Because I spent most of my career in the agency world. So I wasn't in charge of the agency, but I was the head of strategy. And then I went in-house for Greater Than when they were one of my clients, you know. And I would say like now in this third stage where like we started a consultancy that's focused on scaling consumer brands into stores. I realized that part of my journey was limited by solely being focused on e-commerce. I
Mm,
think that that is a really good place to test and to get the data and to really understand who your customer is and to build those communities. But at the end of the day, but like depending on the industry you're in, anywhere from 5 to 15% of sales are made online, and the rest are all in stores. So I've partnered with a former client of mine, actually. He used to be the head of sales for Quest Nutrition, the bar company.
mhm.
And his whole experience has been taking brands who are already in orbit online and getting them into stores. And mine is actually helping brands get into orbit. So we're like, let's just join forces and not just think about e-commerce versus in stores competing with each other, but really being one whole ecosystem and
Sure.
really having a true omni-channel approach to marketing, to sales, to helping brands really just like get to $100 million in the way that we've seen work time and time again. So our focus is really on that. I would say being a business owner has been interesting. I mean, having to go out and find clients, having to deal with accounting, having to deal with just the logistics of that is something that I wasn't really exposed to before. And it's given me so much more empathy for the founders that I've worked with on the consulting side. But I think it's also given me a more well-rounded understanding of business. So that way, when I am consulting and advising our clients, um, it's a little bit more real and it's
Yeah.
a little bit more understanding about exactly what it is that they're dealing with in this exact moment.
And because you went into having a business with marketing, but with most people, whatever their service or product is that they're passionate about, they don't know anything about marketing. So
Yeah,
it's all these pieces where you know what you know and you don't know what you don't know. And it's
yeah,
so hard to find. Well, it's not that it's hard. It's just going to be challenging to find who are those people to trust, what is the right price for this kind of thing, the value, because you don't really have an appreciation for it until you do.
yeah, totally.
So, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing? I mean, you said mentioning, finding clients and doing some of those things. So, what are some of those things that have been some of the bigger hurdles for you to overcome?
I'd say the biggest one has just been, well, two. Like one is just being focused. I would say like once I left Greater Than, which like I mentioned before, like I saw all these opportunities, all this white space. And in those first few months, I was like, well, do we want to focus on this? Do we want to possibly become a venture capital firm? Do we want to do X, Y, and Z? So yeah, it was really important to stay focused on exactly what our core value is, which is really on the marketing and sales piece and doing it right and doing it responsibly and profitably for these companies. And the other piece has just been finding clients. Like I mentioned, I was in the agency world, so we had a sales team. I just focused
Right.
on doing the work. And now it's been like, okay, well, I need to market myself and we need to market people. I'm used to marketing products. So, we just launched a podcast, the Omnichannel Roundtable, 2 months ago, which has actually been really exciting as a marketing vehicle because it's a way for us to talk about the stuff that we know intuitively and our experience and bring on guests who are experts in the field, but we're talking about things that are not being talked about enough. And
Sure.
instead of us complaining about it and being like, well, like
Why don't they know this.
Yeah, exactly. We're like, no, we need to sort of just do something about it. So yeah, it started with us just recording some of our own Zoom calls where we're just talking about the industry. And we're like, wait, this should be a podcast. Like, so yeah, like we've done that. We have really started to just like not solely rely on word of mouth, which is how we've like have been able to like grow to the state we're at now and really start to go after cold traffic. So yeah, it's just been interesting to sort of pivot my marketing hat from being a little bit more removed from it, and it's like a product, a physical good, to actually marketing ourselves, which is not
Yeah.
something that I am used to, and which is why I'm on this podcast and all that.
It doesn't come natural. I mean,
Yeah,
I've interviewed so many different people from different places. I know for myself coming out of the corporate world to being like, well, how hard could it be? And
yeah,
you have the reality of what life looks like, and being able to bring that all together can be it's definitely mind shift and growing and finding those edges and then growing past them and finding new edges, which
totally.
keeps everything super exciting and engaging for sure.
Yeah,
Bryan, this has been amazing. I have really enjoyed getting to talk through this with you. I think it's just such a great reminder of being able to pivot when you need to, like really taking the time to do the research to make sure that the customer you think is your customer is the customer, or
yeah,
maybe there's some other spaces there. And then just how challenging it can be to start your own business, that it's not everyone kind of goes through it and you kind of have to, but there's people like you that can help make that process a little bit easier. So
that's
please tell
it.
people how they can reach out to you and what's the best way to connect and to work with you.
Yeah, sure. So our website is Brand Castle. That's BRANDCASTLE.co. We do free 30-minute consultations. If you just want to sign up there, like we would be happy to speak with you both, or we both would be happy to speak with you. I'm also on LinkedIn at Bryan Alston, which I should continue to link for the show notes.
Yep.
And we have the Omnichannel Roundtable podcast. It's a weekly podcast where we talk about all things CPG, marketing, and growth. So yeah, super excited to be here on the podcast and to hopefully add value to your listeners.
Absolutely. Because branding and marketing, I mean, that's something that everyone needs to keep in mind, because you can think of like, Elon Musk as a person is a brand, but then
Yes.
he's got SpaceX and Tesla and all the other things that he's done. So it's important to make sure that we think of those for ourselves and what are the things that we're putting out there, especially with the way social media is and all the other things. But I mean, we only like touch the surface of the things that I wanted to ask you. So we might have to do a part two sometime.
Yeah, sign me up.
Thank you so very much for being here. It has been such a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And to the listeners, thank you so much for being here. We wouldn't do it without you. If you enjoyed this podcast, please make sure to like, subscribe, share it with your audience. And if there's something that you're curious about, whether it's an industry, a profession, something area that you just want to know more about, please continue to reach out and I'll find the best guests for you. Until next time, everyone, have a good day. Take care.